Hi everyone, welcome to another edition of Adorned with Dignity. Today, the water is going to start getting hot, guys. It's really going to start getting warm. Um, you know, I, I've learned so much from teaching this book. This is the second, year that I'm teaching it, and I've learned so much. And I think that I've learned so much after women were following along last year, and the stories that I heard. And when I would go out to do a lecture and people would, they would comment on this and they would say those things, which I think they thought probably was very difficult for them to say in public. I was quite surprised at some of the reasons that women were not, that they wanted to upgrade, but they weren't upgrading. And, but I have to say that the overall, like if I had to get a number one answer, it would be that they felt that there was this lack of support. And I almost like, I felt like, and I really hope Hashem just lets this sentence be heard all around the world, that if you only knew how many women feel the same way you did, you'd probably find you had more support than you thought. I think that there are so many women who are so afraid of what people are going to say about them if they upgrade, that they stay frozen and they don't upgrade. And sometimes it's within their own homes or within their own families, extended families, or within their own communities. Very difficult, I think, sometimes for them. And I think, I think Am Yisrael, the women of Am Yisrael, all of Am Yisrael, I think, we've fought so many fights over the years that it's in our DNA already, and I think we're growing tired. The problem with that is that this is where Amalek comes in, and he really cools us off, and we see that in this area, in this day and age. We see where people are they don't have the fire that they used to have to serve Hashem, and so it's like they're picking and choosing their battles, and this seems to be the one that they're letting go. So we're going to talk about again, things that might make us shake in our chairs a little bit. And it's talking about analyzing the purpose of the mitzvah of covering the hair. And it says practice of beautifying the hair. And it says the act of a woman beautifying herself by displaying her hair in public is considered an act of immodesty, and it leads to adultery. Therefore, it's considered an isur, a deoraisa, as written. And we learned this from the Sota, who beautified her hair, and through this caused a great sin. For this reason, the Kohen had to uncover her hair as a punishment, mida keneged mida, for adorning her hair for another man. As mentioned previously, from this procedure, we learned that it is a Torah obligation for a woman to conceal her hair in public. So now we're going to start getting into, the spirit behind the mitzvah. What was the intention of this mitzvah? It says the purpose of the mitzvah of covering the hair. The Torah requires a woman to cover her hair in order to detract attention from herself when she's in public, and it's self-understood that she may not beautify her hair for others. Let us introspect with Torah lenses and a pure heart that yearns for the truth. When we analyze many of today's shaitos, we will discover two essential aspects that contradict the fundamental purpose of the mitzvah of covering the hair. So, the other thing that I noticed is that this subject, which is something, I had to learn the hard way from teaching this book. It's so controversial, and it really strikes a nerve, and it is almost one of the greatest silent wars that the women of Am Yisrael are fighting within each other, and it's so horrible. It's like the two teams, Sheitel versus Tichel, and it really shouldn't be that way. And but we're going to talk about some of the sheitels, because it just made a statement which I think that all of us can agree with, that the realness, if you will, of today's sheitels are far different from the ones that were first created. And there's one thing tichel versus sheitel. That's one thing. And then there's, so now we're going to go into the sheitel versus sheitel, because that almost seems to be another silent war that keeps, getting fueled. And, there's these shaitels that are going, they're down the back, they're curly, whatever it is, they're so extravagant, they're layered, they're highlighted, they're this, they're that. I think that in that it's a unanimous thing, right? Don't quote me, but I don't know that I've ever come across any Rav who said that a long shaitel down your back, very well styled, that was okay. I don't know that I've ever heard that. I could be wrong, but I don't know that I've ever heard that. So I think that if you're not ready to go into the tichel, then at least you have to go within the parameters that have been so clearly set and spoken about over and over again, which is that it has to be above the shoulder, and generally they want it to be, a modest style. Not, the same way they wouldn't allow you to have all these, fire engine red for your clothing, or stiletto heels. You have to also use the common sense when you're picking out a shaitel. So, again, it really, it's almost like, three separate arguments going on. You have the zechus versus shaitel, and you have the shaitel versus shaitel. So, I want to say that, over the years, even over the last few years, modesty has taken quite a different turn. Today, there's a look of Jewish modesty, and I got to tell you, to me, it just doesn't seem modest at all. I don't really see the difference between that person or a goya, and I don't know that I've ever heard any Rav say that you have to look terrible when you go out there. I don't know that that's a mitzvah either. The mitzvah is to be snoot. It's not to look horrible, but it's not also to be, the one that everyone turns the heads for. I don't know if that's going to break a few hearts, but, I think that when you really start to embrace this mitzvah, you will see that people will tend to gravitate towards you and really come to adore you for who you are. I think that's the beauty of what tznuis is, that there is, it's just your neshama shining through. And you become really just something, you become a light that everyone can really respect. But it goes on, it says, firstly, there is no article of clothing that a woman is more occupied with than beautifying and spends more on than her shaitel. Furthermore, from all the garments that a woman wears, her beautiful shaitel is the only garment that is worn in public, primarily in public, And it says it is usually taken off the minute she enters the home. And they have an example here of a statement that, a husband had said to a wife, and the wife had mentioned that the wife asked which shaitel should she buy to her husband, and the husband replied, maybe you should ask the owner of the fish store, because he sees it more than I do. So this is a separate incident, this is a separate issue altogether. And the issue of that is that a lot of times, and a lot of us are guilty of this, and even if you followed Peleoetz, when I'm teaching that one, Peleoetz, there was a section in which Harav Papo, Alav Shalom, had said, this is a huge mistake that women are making, that they are getting beautified for the outside world, even with their quote-unquote modesty. But when they get home, it's sweats, it's it's stained clothes, disheveled hair, no makeup, no anything. And this is also a big mistake, and Harav has already spoken about this and said he does not advise this to any woman. So we have to, when we know what's permissible to us, I think we'll be a lot more informed in how to proceed in our day-to-day life. And it goes on to say that even the secular world acknowledges that many shaitels of today contradict the purpose of the mitzvot of that a Jewish woman must cover her hair. Which again, I think I've mentioned this, that, I work in the legal sector. And of course, I think, the first thing people come up to me, after the 3-day grace period, because everybody's like, I don't know if they all have like little huddle meetings, like who's going to go up to her and ask her whether she's, Muslim or not. Because that's what they, ask me first. Are you a Muslim woman? And I first immediately in my head, I think how sad that they don't even equate modesty with a Yid. They don't equate it with a Jewish person. Isn't that really sad? That is so sad, right? So then, of course, I go on and I tell them, in fact, I'm Jewish. And, so then the second question naturally, and of course they're always, I hope I'm not offending you. And of course, and I'm like, no, of course not, maybe you will. But because whenever they start, like, I hope I'm not offending you, perhaps like what they're going to say is going to offend you, but generally it's not. I think they generally want to know. And the number one question that comes out is, why don't you have a wig like all the other Jewish women? So this becomes a very tricky answer and response that you have to give. And the response is not, I'm Sephardic and they're, and they're Ashkenazi or this or that. It's a very delicate thing. One, you don't want to shame your sisters, right? But I think that the Goyim are very confused because they feel like if the obligation is to cover your hair, then cover your hair. And they don't understand this concept of covering your hair with hair. Now, again, this is like the number one question that I get asked all the time from Goyim. But remember, they're able to see this because they don't have a Yetzirah in this. So, it's just like women with Torah study. We can do it all, we can learn the Torah all day, all night. We never can get enough because we don't have a Yetzirah in this. Whereas our husbands, we really have to, for some of us, it's very difficult to get them to go to the kollel, to yeshiva, whatever it is. And some of them are very good, Baruch Hashem, but because they have a Yetzirah in this is an issue that they struggle with, where we don't see what's the big deal. Same way, we don't see what's the big deal in immodest clothing because we're not wired the way they are. So, it's very interesting what the rest of the world thinks of. And, but I gotta tell you that I have never encountered, Baruch Hashem, I've never encountered an incident, even if, I don't know. I think that I've encountered so much respect, especially because I'm in an area where I can tell you probably for miles and miles on end, I know that I'm probably the only woman I know consistently wearing a tzitzis all the time. Not just in the house and then you go out, or some days I'll wear it and some days I won't. I'm the only one I know. And so I get it. I get it. Believe me when I tell you, the lack of support I do get it. It almost seems like I get a harder time probably from the Yidden than from the Goyim. And that shouldn't be. But there's, few narratives I would love to change in this world. And one is that that we as a unit of Klal Yisrael, as the women and the men, because I think they have to start supporting their wife's desire to want to start covering their hair, which is a huge issue. It's another huge issue. But I hope that we would change the narrative of how we see modesty, and that we see it with the eyes of amass, that we see it really for what it's meant to be, for what's the spirit behind it. And that doesn't mean that we go out looking like, shlampadinkas. By the way, I would refuse to go out looking like a shlampadinka. I wouldn't let it happen. But the other narrative I want to change is that I find it very saddening that modesty is not really associated with Jewish women in the eyes of the world. And that's a very sad, sad, sad thing. I'm very saddened that we are not the leaders in that. And I really hope that changes. And with Hashem's help, I know that we can do this. I know that we can get this together. But there's one last thing that the book brings up, and it gave a few examples. But again, they kind of parallel the stories in the conversation I just had. But there's one that said that a man recently confided to his wife that a non-Jewish customer asked him, "Doesn't your Bible command married women to cover their hair?" When I asked him that they were wearing wigs, he replied, "Is this some kind of a joke?" And we learn from this that a woman who wears an attractive wig unintentionally causes Hilul Hashem. And it closes out and says, we know that the women of Bnei Israel are faithful and sincere. And unfortunately, these wigs have entered our midst due to the lack of awareness. And this is very true. This is very true. I think we have to keep in perspective that even though there's these three different arguments, let us always remember that even if a woman has put on an unkosher wig by all standards, right? That we have to see them in a favorable light, and that we have to say to Hashem how much she still desires and wants to do this mitzvah, or she wouldn't even have, she would have just went with her own hair. So the fact that she, one, spent the money, which I'm sure was an exorbitant amount of money. If she has, the price of something, they're insane. And so that's not a lack of desire there. We're not talking about a lack of desire. It really is a lack of awareness, and it's a lack of support. So this is what we really, really have to change. We have to change this narrative, and we have to start coming together. And that's going to conclude today's lesson. Now, tomorrow, I'm going to give you kind of a forewarning, and I'll open up with a warning again tomorrow. Tomorrow, I'm actually going to air the original class, and it was recorded after, there was a reaction to the book, and, the people that reacted to it let me know quite publicly, and it was a great embarrassment to me. It was a great embarrassment the way it all went down. So I kind of stopped teaching the book for a few days, and women started to contact me asking, where's the lessons? Baruch Hashem, right? Where's the lessons? And, I told them that, I didn't want to offend anybody. And, I was going into this whole do-si-do tap dance about why I wasn't, because I didn't want to. I don't know that I emotionally could handle going into reliving what had just happened. And, women overwhelmingly started, they started on the chats that they were almost in essential demanding this book to be read again. They wanted this book to be read, whether they were ready for it or not. They wanted it to be read. And they gave me the koyak and the strength to go on and do this book and finish the book. B'ezrat Hashem, with his help, we did it. We did it, and since then, it's been amazing how women have been seeking me out to get these classes on the audio, which is why, in turn, I decided to put them up on YouTube, which are available at Gimel Dalet 777, and I'm starting to put them up on SoundCloud. So it's been an amazing year since this book came out. And of course, I know the people who who did this book, and, I'm part of their organization, and they couldn't be more thrilled that the word is getting out. And I think there are more and more people who really want to observe this mitzvah. So tomorrow we're going to post the original class, and it is a very, very emotional. I think in all the shiurim I've done, this was the most emotional one I've ever done. And to this day, when I hear the recording, it still brings tears to my eyes, because I still feel, though I've let it go, the whole thing, and I've forgiven and I've let it go. I think the pain of it, the whole thing, it was just a very difficult situation, but I think more so because, this is a very serious mitzvah that people are transgressing. And I think more than that, it really does hurt my heart. Tznuis is the most important mitzvah a woman will ever do in her life. And I really hope that more and more women will somehow, some way, that they will find the koyach and the strength to turn their back on Amalek and to do what Hashem has always asked for them, which is to be modest and to be holy. So that's it for today, and I hope we'll all be together again soon. B'ezrat Hashem.